Welcome. This is David Laws, the Lsbf lecturer for ACCA P3, the business analysis paper, with our final instalment about how to answer an exam standard question in 10 easy steps. So step number 10. And in step number 10, we are going to be looking at answering part B of the June 2011 question 1. That's the question we've been looking at all the way through, where the examiner says, is something a good idea? Now, in some of the previous steps, particularly step 8 and step 9, we have already done some work on whether we think this is a good idea. We have used some numbers. We have looked at what we did in part A and trying to think about how it links in with part B. But the bit we're going to look at now is the fact that there will also be some extra information purely to do with part B. So there'll be some information you saw in A and it comes back again in B. There'll be some information that is purely for part B. So, for example, it says the manufacturer has quoted a production price of $3,500 per car. That turns out to be $1,000 cheaper than what they are paying at the moment to produce it themselves. But the examiner also says the manufacturing plant is approximately 300 miles from Erewhon. Erewhon is the country where the Eco Car Company is based. And this includes crossing the 40-mile wide Gulf of Bahrain. Now, why on earth has the examiner told you this? It can't be anything to do with part A, because part A was about what they are doing at the moment, and this is new. So it must be to do with part B. There must be a reason in why we are told it. So, we know that we've got an overseas manufacturer. It says we're going to outsource this to an overseas company. So, quality issues. If we are outsourcing something, will we be able to monitor the quality as easily as we would like? One of the things we noticed in part A was that there was a lot of legislation that the government was going to introduce. Would the overseas manufacturer be able to comply with all of that legislation? Because if they're in another country, they may not understand what the legislation is. They may not even be aware that the law has changed. If the government in Germany changes the law on something, I don't know about it. So there might be problems there. The overseas manufacturer, it's overseas. Well, what difference does that make? And finally, one of the things, again, that we're told in part A, the car uses some technology which we have a patent on. It's one of our biggest strengths. And now we're going to let somebody else know how to use it, because somebody else is going to have the technology, because they're going to be able to make the car for us. What could happen? This overseas manufacturer could simply say, right, we will make the car for 2 years. Now we know all about the secrets that you've got to make your car. We will make our own version. So is this a good idea? Well, there are obviously some reasons why it might not be. Down at the bottom, the plant is 300 miles away. So what? Well, how are you going to know what they're doing? How are you going to know that they're controlling their costs properly? How are the management of EcoCar going to know that the production is being run properly? They're 300 miles away. That's a very long distance. The cars need to come across the Gulf of Bahrain. They need to cross water. So why on earth has the examiner told you that? Well, is there a danger that they could be on a ferry that could sink? Is there a danger that perhaps they'd be damaged as they cross? Would they be damaged by bad weather? Maybe that there is a problem, perhaps that the cars would be very slow to arrive. For all I know, ferries only cross this Gulf 2 or 3 times a week. For all I know. What happens if customers want things in a hurry? What happens if a big customer says, please send us 5 cars tomorrow? The cars are being made 300 miles away. You might not be able to get them there very quickly. Now again, to a certain extent, I'm making things up. There might not be any problems with the weather. But the fact that the examiner has put it in the question means he wants you to put it in your answer. So they have to go across some water. There is a gulf 40 miles wide. Put it in your answer somewhere. This is going to make transporting the cars more tricky because. That's all you have to do. So there will be some positives. For example, from a financial perspective, it looks good. The production cost is lower. From a non-financial perspective, it doesn't look so good. You've got this problem with quality, you've got this problem with patents, you've got potentially the problem of getting the cars across the water, you've got some goods and you've got some bads. So there will be positives and there will be negatives. What lots of students do in the exam is they simply say, this is good, this is bad, I will do part C. And they never actually come to a conclusion whether something's a good idea or not. Now, there'll be some marks for that. Does it matter what your conclusion is? To a certain extent, no, to be perfectly honest with you. If you've got lots of, you could simply say, from a financial point of view, they're going to save $1,000 a car. Okay, there are problems with quality, there might be problems with transportation, but they're going to save $1,000 a car. I think you should do it. Fine, I'd give you the marks for that. Other students would say they're going to lose $1,000 a car, or they're going to save $1,000 a car, but perhaps the quality won't be as good, perhaps the government won't like it, perhaps the population won't like it. Saving $1,000 is good, but there might be other things which actually cost you more money in the long run. Don't do it. And I could mark that correct as well. I could mark both of those answers correct, even though they're completely different to each other. The thing is justifying what you are saying, having a conclusion for a sensible reason. That's all we're looking for. Okay then, so the 10 steps that we have gone through, we started the first 3 steps didn't look at the question at all. They simply looked at the requirement. We looked at what we had to do, how long we'd have to do it, and what the words told us to do, how many bits there were to the question. Step 4 started looking at what the examiner is telling us. In step 5 and step 6, we took what the examiner told us and we put it into a PESEL model or into a Porter's 5 Forces model. In step 7, we thought about what are we going to do when we write a report to make sure we get some professional marks, because they're easy marks to get. Number 8, we looked at some numbers and what we would do with them. Number 9, we said we've done some work in part A, how does it relate to part B? And finally, in step 10, we've said, but you need to have an opinion. What might give you an opinion which is good, or what might give you an opinion that says something is not good? So those are the 10 steps that you follow. Now, if you follow those 10 steps, you almost certainly will not get full marks in the exam, because you'll miss something out, or there'll be something that you don't understand, or there'll be a number that you get wrong. But if you follow those 10 steps, you take what a lot of students find difficult. The trouble with P3 is it's simply do this, and the examiner doesn't give you any clues as to how to do it. That's now broken it down into 10 little bits. And if you do an exam question in those 10 little pieces, then you will be probably getting more than enough marks to pass. It won't even be close. You'll be getting quite a lot of marks. You won't get all of them, but you get a lot of them. Now, any of you that are thinking about doing P3, if you practice any exam questions, then try and follow those 10 steps. The first 4 you can do for any question. The professional marks you can do for any question. PESEL and Porter's 5 Forces work in this question. In another question, obviously it might be a different model, but the same things apply. Find what he says in the narrative and put it in the right place. There will be numbers in lots of questions. Parts A and B linked together in lots of questions. So a lot of that is fairly standard for any question. So break it down into little bits you can do. You've got a much better chance of doing well. So that is how you answer an exam question. Question 1, June 2011, There were 90 minutes to do it. You've basically got to do 10 different things. It is doable. You have got plenty of time to be able to do it. So all it remains for me to do is to say I hope you have found these 10 videos useful. Best of luck in your P3 exam. So this is David Laws, LSBF's lecturer for P3, saying best of luck for your studies.